Welcome everyone. If you were watching earlier our live session, we had some technical difficulties with connectivity issues, and so to keep you from clicking in and out and having to miss everything, go in and out on static, we've decided to record the whole thing and publish it for you today. So if you've heard this before, my spiel, sorry about that. We're going to go over it again. Well, my name is Jeb Fields, and I'm an assistant professor and extension specialist here at the Hammond Research Station, and I'm joined by Ashley Edwards, a research associate, and Jason Stagg, one of our lead horticulturists. And together we run and manage the Hammond trial gardens, and that's really what we're going to show you today. Before that, I kind of want to mention a little bit about Hammond Research Station. The Hammond Research Station is where most of our research and extension for the ornamental green industry occurs in Louisiana. We really focus on the landscape, the nursery, and even some bit of the greenhouse industry. A lot of our mission is to provide information and knowledge and support to those industries. Our true actual mission is twofold. It is to promote, evaluate, and develop new specialty crops for the Louisiana green industry, which is what we're doing and we're going to talk about mostly today in the trial gardens, as well as to develop and promote more sustainable practices for landscape production and nursery production, which is more along the lines of what my research is, but that's something for a later day. The Hammond Research Station itself is about 140 acres, and about 40 of that is actually in trials. So we have a massive amount of trial area to really maintain, and I'd like to give props to all the staff and faculty here at the station because we've done a fantastic job. I want to reiterate, one of the reasons we're doing this tour is because normally we'd have our field day right about now and we'd have everyone out. Unfortunately, due to the COVID pandemic, we cannot have the field day. We can't have people on. We are not open to the public as of yet. But we have still made sure that the gardens are in tip-top shape, and we've pushed forward with what we would normally do. When this COVID pandemic first started in March, we didn't know where it was going to go. So that's normally our planting time. We didn't know if we were going to be able to have field day this year, which was scheduled for next Friday, or not. So we wanted to make sure that we actually planted everything. We didn't hold back on our trials. We had our trials out fully. And we were under a lot of pressure on that. We were down to ghost crew and skeleton crews, and it was still able to pull off this feat that I'm very proud of, as you see going by. And so later today I'll show you the crew and our staff, and we can thank them for all the hard work they've done, because this place is looking great in my opinion. The station, our gardens, our trials are split up into about five plus different gardens, and we can't show you all that today. The video would be 2.5, 3 hours long. And so we're going to really just highlight the best and what most people think. So we're going to touch on 3 of our major gardens, our most popular. We have a few others. I'll just mention one of our gardens that's really neat, we're not going to get to go into, is the crepe myrtle garden. And we have about 80 to 90 different varieties of crepe myrtles that are on the market. And something we get a lot of questions on is which crepe myrtle to use, because there's so many colors, there's so many forms, there's so many sizes, there's so many shapes. It's important to make sure you plant the right one. And so this is a long-term demonstration area that really shows the crepe myrtles how big they get. You don't want to plant a 15-foot crepe myrtle in place you need a 10-foot one or a 4-foot one, and vice versa. It just won't make your landscape look good. So you can come out here and see. So moving on with the tour, where we're at right now is the Alan D. Owings Sun Garden. This is probably our most popular garden at the station. The Sun Garden's where we do most of our bedding plant trials, most of our perennial trials, and also some woody and shrub, some long-term trials. What we've done over the last year or two is really work to organize these gardens to make it a logical flow of plants so we could easily find our things ourselves, and as people come out and view it, they can find it. So we're grouping plants. So where we're at right now is the back end of this Alan D. Owings Sun Garden, which is what we call the phenology area. And this is where a lot of our woodies and long-term shrubs and trees are grown for their initial trial. So the trials in this area may last for 3 to 5 years. What I want to do is just talk about a few of the plants here in the phenology area real quick, highlight a few. First of all, we have Cinnamon Girl Distylium, and this is a plant that we really like. There's quite a few Distyliums in our collection, and we'll see some more as we go on, but we're really liking Cinnamon Girl. This one's been planted for about 2 years, I think. It's got good growth. These Distyliums are very hardy. They take wet, they take dry, they take heat, they take cold. It's really hard. They're a very tough plant, so they're a great plant to line as a shrub, or even a parking lot plant. You could consider it something that really just can take that heat from that asphalt. Something else I'm going to highlight that we're really excited, we're doing a lot of work with and seeing a lot this year are Abelias. You can see right here, this is an Abelia. It's a very underutilized plant, we believe, in the Louisiana landscapes. Fantastic. You see blooms all over in the heat of the summer, takes the rain, takes the wet really well, and the pollinators absolutely love it. Bees, wasps, butterflies, everything, just all over Abelias. And this is a fantastic specimen, but we're going to show you some really neat ones as we go on in the tour.
Okay everyone, I just wanted to stop here real quickly and highlight one of my favorite root hardy tropical shrubs, which means that it will die down to the ground in harsh winters, but typically for Louisiana it always comes back. And in mild winters in Louisiana, we'll find that this even holds its leaves. It will stop blooming, but it will hold its leaves. And this is Cestrum. This particular one is called Orange Peel. You might see it listed on the market as Orange Zest, but this started blooming actually in March. It's gonna bloom until first frost. It's an incredible plant. Hummingbirds love it. It's visited by pollinators, and just a really unusual shrub. And you can see it gets pretty large. And we have purple, a lighter color also called butterscotch cestrum. And then this again is the showstopper for me, which is Orange Peel. One of the other plants that we really love here at the Hammond Research Station are Vitex. And Vitex are small to medium-sized flowering trees. They flower in the summer. They start in late May generally and go through June. Then they'll kind of cycle out of flower and then continue on again one more time at least later on in the summer or early fall. This is a new introduction on the market. It's a hybrid between two species of Vitex, and it's called Flipside. And the reason they call it Flipside is because underneath the leaves they have a nice purple lavender color to them that you really see when the bush is swaying in the breeze. It gives a little bit of contrast to it. So breeding was done to bring in a larger flower on this one, and it's, as you can see, it's been an excellent performer. It's exceeded our expectations in growth, and it's proven to be quite root hardy.
Something else we're really excited about at the Hammond Research Station, a lot of people you've heard us talk about pollinators 3 or 4 times already today, and we just started. People are really interested in a lot of ecosystem services, and pollinator plants are one of the more popular. One of the best pollinator plants we have with the most color in the state of Louisiana is Salvia. We have such a diverse variety of salvias, different species, different colors, different forms, different habits. This is a newly renovated bed, really dedicated to a lot of the new salvias on the market. I don't know, Jason, would you talk about anything in particular that you want to highlight?
Yeah, absolutely, because this is actually one of my favorite beds, along with number 33, that small round bed that has a collection of different salvias in it. And I think one of the main focus areas here is to figure out which of these salvias actually are going to be perennial in Louisiana. Oftentimes, and many years ago, people used to think of salvias as annuals, but now there's been so many good perennial species introduced on the market. Some of these, some of the genetics would be like the Salvia garniticus, some of these taller salvias, and especially this tall purple one right over here. These do really well in our climate despite the high amount of rainfall and the high humidity levels. As you can see, they're pushing right through everything, and we've had a really wet year again and high humidity levels, as evidenced by my shirt. So the Garniticas have been stellar performers for us, as have the Salvia farinaceae species. And you can just take a shot right across here. Some of them have cycled out of bloom because of the rain, but so many of them are still blooming. And if you can see, just look at the pollinator activity buzzing on all of these. All right, one of the other plants we wanted to highlight right here are Vinca, or Cataranthus. You'll know these as just ubiquitous throughout the landscapes in Louisiana, especially for summertime color, because they can take as much heat as you can throw at them. However, sometimes in a wet summer or with too much overhead irrigation, you'll see a leaf spot develop on these, and it'll really pull the plants down. This is a new breeding that's come out of Syngenta, and this is the Cora Vinca series XDR. And you can look and see exactly how wonderfully they're standing up to our climate. We've had a ton of rain, like I said, for the last couple of weeks, and they're just doing fantastic. So we're very happy with the performance of these, and we think it's going to be a real hit for Louisiana as more and more people use these. Just wanted to stop at this bed for just a second here. We have a great collection of daylilies from a local breeder here in Louisiana. These daylilies are rust resistant. Some of them bloom very early in the year, some of them bloom a little later, and some repeat bloom. We've had these in trial now for about a year and have been quite happy with their performance. They're cycling out of bloom a little bit right now, but we've had a great show from these this year so far.
Speaking of daylilies, are perennials, and we use them as a perennial in the landscape. as I mentioned, we've kind of organized the garden to in the back part where we started off with more woodies, more trees, more shrubs. We're now in the perennial area. These are bedding plants, ground covers, smaller plants that act as perennials. You want to keep them for a few years. So our trials on these will last 2 to 3 years, if not longer sometimes. So what you have here is a good idea of the perennial trials. So if you want to point out a few in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. First, a wonderful surprise here. People in Louisiana always want lavender, but again, our rainfall and our high humidity usually cause problems for these, and they don't last very long, even in a container. These were planted this year, but so far they're holding up really well. And back here, likewise, this is catmint, something you don't see sold a lot in Louisiana as an ornamental. Not to be confused with catnip, which is a different plant altogether. But if you can look at the bloom on this, this is holding up so well for us so far this wet summer, and you can see the pollinator activity on it. Back here, we have Millie Rock Rose Yarrow, or Achillea. Now, these are the older blooms. This is the color, the new color coming on here. You can see they stay in a nice tight cluster. They're not spreading too badly, and they're also, again, holding up quite well for us. A lot of times the perennials that we'll trial out here tend to do better in drier climates. But again, that's why we trial. It's okay if we see some things die off and some things not do so well. That's information the breeder needs to know, and that's information that our industry needs to know on what to plant and have the best success.
And on that note, Jason brings up a good point. I want to just highlight that we are not a botanical garden. We are a trial garden. So a lot of things out here you'll see aren't the best, and that's what we're trying to find information. Most things look really good and grow really well for us. We have a very amazing climate for plant growth, especially in the landscape, but some things don't, and that's the information we're looking. What grows the best and what doesn't. So that, and also you'll notice we don't do a lot of pruning out here. That's not what we want to do. We don't want to keep things pristine and manicured. We want to make sure that people can see the true form or how a plant's going to interact in the landscape. All right. So something else about the Hammond Research Station and our trials that's kind of unique is we plant everything in the landscape form instead of in rows. So you can see everything's next to each other, and we'll see how different plants grow together. You'll see that, and it gives us a really unique look and a really unique feel. Something else is we have long-term demonstrations on how to do certain activities in the garden mixed in, and our goal is that you won't be able to tell what the trials are actual plant trials and what are demonstrations, because they're all mixed together, and that's how we see it. One of the demonstration areas I really want to highlight, because people are so interested and we've been talking all about it, is our pollinator garden. And so this bed right here is our demonstration pollinator garden. These are all fantastic plants for bringing butterflies, bringing bees, larval plants for butterflies, for different species. And so these are all great plants to have in your landscape if you want to attract pollinators. Jason, would you highlight a few in particular?
Yeah, absolutely. First, I wanted to start real quickly with these porterweeds. The flower is small, but the attraction potential for pollinators is incredibly large. This is one that's called dark blue, dwarf dark blue. It actually looks a little bit more purple to me. This is not a native, it is an exotic, but as you can see, it keeps this nice compact form. We have a red porterweed over here, striking red color, has the same attraction potential. And then this bed is filled with a number of species of milkweed. So this is the giant tropical milkweed, available in lavender and white. We happen to have the lavender plants this year. This does provide a food source for the larval monarch butterfly caterpillars. We do have some native milkweeds right here. This is Asclepias tuberosa. You can see that beautiful bright orange color for the bloom. Again, a great larval food source for monarch butterflies. Also a native, a dwarf jopai weed just coming into flower. This is a nectar source for a lot of butterflies, as are these pentas. This is a tried and true old ruby red pentas. One of the more unusual plants here that always gets a lot of conversations going, especially when we're having in-person field days, is this is a larger tropical milkweed. It's not the same as the giant tropical milkweed. And as you can see, the seeds form in these large balloon-like structures, and these will actually dry, turn brown, and then you can extract the seeds, the same downy seeds that you see on other milkweed species.
All right, so I had just mentioned how we're really loving Abelia this year, and there's so many that we're gonna see on this tour, but I want to take a minute to highlight my favorite, I think, from the garden this year. This is Peach Perfection. Great pollinator activity like all Abelias, but you get this really nice color. It's very vigorous. This has grown this tall in about 2 years is all it's taken, year and a half even. And you can see, if you get up close, you can see all this peach reddish color on the leaves. And so it changed. The new growth comes in with this really peachy, splotchy colors. It's really neat. In the fall, you get a little bit of burgundy, so it's kind of like ever changing in the garden. It really just highlights and pops, and it's something we're really interested in. Something else I'd like to mention along this is we have a new Facebook program that was developed by myself and Ashley Edwards called Monday Marvels. And since we are close to the public, normally we'd have people out here seeing everything. While we do post our trial results and data online and in our field days and make our book, we wanted to be able to give you updates of what's going on. And so we posted a few just random pictures throughout the garden, irregularly, unscheduled, and they got a lot of hype on Facebook. So what we've decided to do is have a scheduled release where we mention 2 to 5 different plants every week on Monday, and those are our Monday Marvels, and that's really what's going in the garden, what's looking fantastic at a time. And this was our very first Monday Marvel. So it's only been 2 weeks, so please make sure you follow the Hammond Research Station Facebook to see what's changing, what's looking great each and every week. So something we've talked about is ecosystem services. A lot of big trend around the country is people are looking for multifunctional plants and multifunctional landscapes. Landscapes that either help with attract pollinators, we talked about, or help with remediate water or remediate chemicals out of the landscape, or all a variety or myriad of functions. The most obvious one is edible landscaping, and this is a trend that's sweeping the country right now. So we're working with Ashley Edwards, who's really interested in edible landscaping, and that's what we have going on, just our start for edible landscaping bed. Ashley, you want to tell us about any of these?
Yeah, we have a collection of basils, which are highly attractive to a lot of pollinators, which I appreciate. We have trialing companies that are starting to send us more edible plants. So we have our autumn frost squash. And here we have Asian delight eggplant, which are kind of cool looking and actually also delicious.
All right, so now we've moved towards our actual bedding plant trials, and these are a lot of our annuals where we only trial these for 1 season. This is our color area, and if you just pan around, you'll see all the different colors we can see. So in these beds, there's a few that we want to really highlight and talk about. One of my favorite is this Heart of the Jungle Colocasia. It's a full sun Colocasia. It grows really fast, rapid. It gets you this really neat tropical look. And now we're seeing a little bit of wind pickup, which is even better because you can see the wind action in these Colocasia. It's just gorgeous color, gorgeous size, great plant for the landscape, something I'm really interested in.
Here we have our heated up Gallardia in scarlet and also in yellow. This is our 2nd year trialing this plant, and it always is a top performer in my opinion, and folks here when they come seem to like it as well.
All right, so on this side of the bed, we have a couple of new introductions of Coleus, and these are Sun Coleus. This is Royal Pineapple Brandy, and this is Cherry Brandy over here, the red. And these exemplify a trend in Coleus breeding. You can see this beautiful serrated edge to the leaves, this really nice compact mounding habit. These have not been pinched or shaped in any way, and they're withstanding the sun so well. And really, the full sun is what brings out all these vibrant colors. In this bed, we have a lot of plants from the Ball Company, and this is the Valiant series of Vinca. And again, excellent performance from these despite all the rainy, wet weather. Really happy with the color production and the color retention on these blooms. I mean, look at this color right here. This is Valiant Punch, and it stays like this all summer long, no matter what kind of heat July, August, and September throw at it. And behind it, a fantastic new salvia called White Flame. Look at the pollinator activity on this. And what's great about this is Salvia farinaceae species. It stays very compact, again, holding up great through our wet, rainy weather. You can see the pollinator activity and the blooms. It's so uniform. It doesn't get too large, so this can be used in smaller landscaping spaces and provides a great white backdrop for brighter colors.
We usually don't control for pests at the Hammond Research Station. We want to see pest resistance in a lot of our trial plants, but there is one pest in particular that we're really not looking for, and that is deer. We sometimes have a problem with deer in certain things, especially some of our ornamental sweet potatoes, so you'll see a few fences like this post up around some of our areas that the deer particularly like to eat. That being said, in here are 2 of our favorite plants this year, one in particular, and Ashley, would you talk about this?
Sure. This is the Suncredible sunflower. It did, as he mentioned, get pruned a little bit by the deer in the beginning, but now, as you can tell, they are really thriving in the landscape, fully covered by pollinators, and
Monday Marvel.
they were also featured on a Monday Marvel. So.
One other thing on this side is the deer fencing, and you can really see what Dr. Fields was speaking about. You can see how the deer are pretty much keeping the sweet potatoes pruned right outside the fence, but inside everything was looking great. Love the leaf texture on this very strappy leaf. It's called Medusa, and holding up really well in the sun, getting a little bit of bronzing here on the new growth, and I think this is going to be a great addition to the ornamental sweet potatoes in the landscape industry.
All right, even though I said this is more for bedding plants in this area, there are a few exceptions because they were here, they had been here when we first started the change, and we just loved them so much. I really want to mention this Jazz Hands variegated Loropetalum. It's looking fantastic right now. These have up and down years, some years where you don't get a lot of variegation, some years where you do. And right now, these are just looking thrilling to us. One other plant in this garden that we really want to point out, Jason's going to talk about a plant with potential.
That's right. So one of the programs we have out here at the Hammond Research Station to promote underutilized and non-patented or non-trademarked plant material is called Plants with Potential. And we called it that because we can feature a lot of plants that are not well known in the market, but should be, because they've been performing for years out here with excelling standards. And so this is Rebel Child Salvia. It's another Salvia farinaceae, a beautiful blue color. Again, you can see very uniform. Now, you're seeing a lot of the older bloom heads from an earlier bloom cycle, but the new ones are coming on. And this has been one of our more popular plants in Plants with Potential. This was discovered by Greg Grant in Texas.
So something else we're really loving in the garden, and this is actually another Monday Marvel, is this Scaevola. This is Cerdiva White Improved. And there's a few different colors, but the White Improved is just so popping for our garden. I love the green in the middle and the white outside. It's very unique. I think it's usually you see it in a hanging basket, but it does fantastic as a ground cover, something we're extremely excited about this year. As we move down, another plant that we're very excited about, Jason's going to talk to you right now, this series.
Oh yeah, this Cataranthus, this is also Vinca, but as you can see, totally different growth habit. It's dwarf, smaller blooms, tighter growth habit, and this is the Soiree series. And we've got a number of colors here that have just been doing great. These are wonderful for containers, but at the same time, they're also doing really well in the landscape. And some of these new coral colors are fairly new in the series. Some of these have been out for a few years, but again, just star performers. And we expect them to do this throughout the summer. This is one of my favorites, the coral. It's got this little white eye and this beautiful hot pink color.
And we really think these can be some amazing ground covers here in Louisiana and can start to be used more and more. Real quick, moving over here, Jason earlier talked about Plants with Potential, one of our programs. Another one that I think a lot of you have heard of is Louisiana Super Plants. And Louisiana Super Plants is where we take the best of the best each year and we select superior plant material for Louisiana landscapes. One of our most recent inductees in the Louisiana Super Plants program is Flamethrower Coleus. Now I think Jason also mentioned to you that there's a big breeding trend in Coleus right now to keep these really serrated, compact plants. And this Flamethrower series is very much that. It's the epitome of these compact serrated plants. If you look around, we have two new colors this year that was released, Cajun Spice and Sriracha. And then what I really want to point out to you on these, and just same with the other Coleus we have that we showed you earlier, is you're not seeing flowers. Now some people like flowers on their Coleus because they do attract perennial or pollinators, but really Coleus are grown for the color and the foliage. And so what you'll notice is with these Coleus and the Flamethrower series and the previous ones we've talked about specifically, there's not a lot of flowers. In fact, only one of the varieties, and it's one of the earlier varieties released, has sent up flowers so far. And this is a trend we see year after year. While we're here, I'd just like to point out, if you look across the way at this bed, more Coleus with some super plant sun patiens and that heart of the jungle Colocasia, just some really neat things. We do multiple plantings of everything here to try it in different water areas, different water retention, sun, shade, etc. And so we try and make what you would have as a nice landscape bed out of some of our best plants. So I just wanted to highlight that, something we're really excited about.
So I think this is a good example. You can probably hear us sloshing around here in the sun garden. So the sun garden has a natural drain to it, but we've had so much rain lately that it's just staying completely saturated, which is pretty unusual for the summer. But that's why we build our landscape beds up. You can see where the water pools on the side, but the landscape beds are higher, and this is how we do all our trialing to standardized trialing. Something else that's doing quite well holding up to the water are these Zahara Zinnias. This is a double Zahara collection, and not only is the color holding up really well, you're seeing very little leaf spot on them. The structure's holding together in nice tight ball shapes, and these usually last for us most of the summer.
All right, so one other thing I really wanted to highlight for you today is how our gardens are ever changing. And the reason is we want to show these plants at different times of the year. We want these gardens to look tip-top throughout the summer, throughout the fall, throughout the spring, all around. So that takes a lot of work and effort by our amazing crew out here. So what you can see, they're planting some Caladiums right now. And normally you'd plant Caladiums earlier in the year, but we really want to see how these do in the really hot heat of August and September. And so that's something else we do, is we trial plants not in different shade and sun areas or wet and dry, but we'll also trial them throughout the year so we can kind of actually tell people when to plant these, when's the optimal time.
Right now we've got Nicole, Cordrion, and Cody over there, and they're actually going to be installing these in separate groups because this is how we normally do our trialing. So Nicole, you started these about 3 or 4 weeks ago in the greenhouse, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, and Cordrion, the number that y'all are planting, y'all planting a full tray of 18?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this bed is going to be 18 of each variety of Caladium, and then later we'll come back and we'll take survivability data, growth data. They're all going to be right next to each other so we can see comparatively the size on these, and this is how we'll give a good report back to the trialing company and also to our industry.
So that concludes our tour of the Alan D. Owings Sun Garden. We want to show you more, we're just limited by time restraints, so we're going to take you through this one last garden before it ends. And then if you want to come back, make sure you tune into our Hammond Research Station webpage or the LSU AgCenter YouTube page in the next 3 weeks. Hopefully by the end of July, we're going to have our virtual tour and our virtual field day uploaded. That's going to be a lot more in-depth information on a lot more plants that we skipped over in the sun garden, as well as plants in the shade garden, the piney woods, and the azalea garden behind me. But what we wanted to do is we wanted to especially highlight the azalea garden today, because typically we'll highlight this garden at our Margie Jenkins lecture series in April, which unfortunately was canceled due to the pandemic this past year. Unfortunately, we had some very sad news. I know most of you know one of our longtime supporters of the Hammond Research Station, as well as the nursery industry, native plants, and plant production throughout the South. Miss Margie passed away at the young age of 98 this year. And this garden is dedicated to Margie H. Jenkins, so if you look at the plaque. And this garden was really set up to instill a lot of Miss Margie's beliefs and thoughts and cares on gardening. So Jason, will you talk a little bit more about the plants and why we have what plants we have in this garden?
Absolutely. So those of you who knew Margie or knew of her story know that she was a pioneer in introducing new and unusual plant material to the nursery industry, not just in Louisiana, but across the southern United States. And so this garden was dedicated to her many years ago to actually house the collection of those plants, many of the things that she would have sold or still is being sold at her nursery. So a lot of what we have in here are azaleas, but it's not just azaleas. Miss Margie brought in a couple of different series of azaleas that bloomed later in the summer and some that rebloomed. And those are all featured here, as well as newer introductions from other companies such as Encore Azaleas, the reblooming azalea. Also, Miss Margie was known for actually curating wild plants and bringing them into cultivation. And she would find these in the area here in this part of Louisiana. And so a lot of those native plants are actually housed in here as well, along with some of her favorite companion plants that she sells in her nursery. So that comprises a lot of the collection in here, but we do have a few trials in here. Different azaleas, different hydrangeas can also be trialed in here. And if you kind of look up, you see that we still have a lot of this nice dappled shade in this garden. And that provides the perfect landscape lighting for a lot of these plants, but it doesn't come without risks. Jeb, you might want to talk about some of the storm damage we've received.
Yeah, something that you will notice, especially if you're a longtime supporter or visitor of the azalea garden, is it looks quite different. This past October and earlier this year, we had some major storms roll through, and we lost some full-grown, very old pine trees and some other maples and all different trees, magnolias, that just snapped in half in some heavy storms. And so this garden is actually maturing, and as it matures, things change and we get too much shade. So this is just a nice breath of fresh air. This damage that has come was unfortunate, but it also brought a lot of light and it changed our garden and let us continue moving through. You can see we're moving a lot of plants up. We're reassessing what we have. We had an intern this past spring who is a landscape architect who really helped us understand the design of this garden and how to take the garden to the next step. Now that it's about 15 years old, it's really getting to that mature spot. I'm not going to highlight too many things, but I do want to just mention one thing that is probably my favorite plant in here, and this is this osmanthus, which is a typical plant we have all over the state in the spring. You all know the smell. It's sweet olive, fantastic smell. Unfortunately, you can't see it now, but this one has a bright orange flower, which I just find to be marvelous, that stands out in this entire garden. And so this is always one of my favorites. All right, so that concludes our live Facebook virtual tour. Unfortunately, as I say, we apologize. We had technical difficulties and we couldn't really do it live, but hopefully you all visit and enjoy this video. This video is going to be posted on our Facebook page, on the Hammond Research Station website under our virtual field day, as well as the LSU AgCenter YouTube page, so make sure you check it out. Send us your questions if you have any. I want to say on that note, our virtual field day is scheduled for late July, and so make sure you hear it or check for it at the end of the month on the Hammond Research Station field day or virtual field day page. We're going to have a lot of great information. We're going to go over everything we did much more in depth, touch on a lot more of the plant material, check out this garden, the sun garden. We're going to go into the piney woods. We're going to go to the shade garden and all across the station, even to have you some research updates for some of the new and exciting research we're doing here. With that, I'd like one more thing to do is to thank our wonderful crew and staff here at the Hammond Research Station. They all are the ones that worked so hard to get this place looking fantastic this year, and it's just been a joy.
So with that, I just wanted to quickly introduce everyone. So we're going to start right here on the right. So we've got Cody Webb. We've got Case Ford, new student worker for the summer. Corey Scott. Nicole Bryan. Cordrion Tucker. Jonathan Ford. And Christopher Cristione. And Ashley Edwards. So these folks, this small crew, makes all of this happen. All 140 acres, every weed pulled, everything sprayed, every plant planted. It's an amazing job that these folks are able to do with such a large piece of property. So with that, thanks everybody for following us on the tour, and we hope to see you soon. Bye.
Bye.